Not gonna lie to you guys, I was thinking long and hard what would be a good cringe trope for my Deadpool and Wolverine spoiler review, and I mean, why not just take inspiration from the intro of this movie? But because we're on YouTube and that song would get me copy striked, let's do it with no music and tell me from a scale of 1 to 10 how hard it is to watch. I watched one video on the dance moves and this is all I memorized. Deadpool and Wolverine spoiler review. So that's exactly what I'll be doing here for you guys. I'll be giving you my spoiler review for Deadpool and Wolverine, going into all the Easter eggs, cameos, end credit scene, post credit scene, talking about my favorite, best moments from this movie, other things they could have done better, and trying to understand why some people are absolutely hating this movie, because I'm getting those comments already. And while today in this video you're just gonna hear me yap about my thoughts, on Sunday I will be making a live stream and you could submit your response to Deadpool and Wolverine, whether you loved it, you hated it, favorite Easter egg, all that kind of stuff, this Sunday on the channel. But if you can't make that, just go ahead and leave a comment. Alright, so let's just dive into it here. Giving you my overall thoughts. Look, I made it no secret. I was lucky enough to get invited to the red carpet world premiere thanks to a sponsor, not Disney or Marvel, who invited me. They've never done that and I don't think they ever will. But my first viewing of this movie, man, it was an infectious energy. I was in a room with fans, celebrities. They were laughing, clapping. Every little joke and reveal in this movie had an uproar of the crowd. And that definitely created a bias in me of how much I ended up loving this movie. And well, I've seen it also a second time. And it was a complete opposite experience. My theater was almost dead silent the entire time. Didn't even clap or cheer for when Chris Evans showed up, believe it or not. But on my personal opinion, second time watching the movie, some of its flaws definitely stood out more. I understand now why some people aren't loving it as much, but I still walked away really liking this movie. Deadpool to me is a character that is just trying to have fun and entertain you, and that's exactly what this movie did. It entertained me. It brought so much joy to my face. But at the same time, I do agree, this is the weakest story out of the three movies. It has the least emotional impact. It's got a very messy structure. Sometimes it's all over the place, and I do feel like it's not gonna age as well as the first two movies. But we'll dive into specifics on those. Let's just start from the beginning. Obviously, I'm not gonna hit every Easter egg in detail because we would be here for hours, because there was something you can point at and stare at every second in this movie. I'll do my best to remember the big moments, but I'm definitely gonna miss some stuff. Okay, so the way the movie opens up, already jaw to the ground. We see Deadpool going to the gravesite of Logan. Immediately I got scared because I was like, oh, you guys said you weren't touching Logan. You're actually gonna dig up his grave. And then when I saw his adamantium skull sitting next to Deadpool, it was funny, but there was a part in my gut that I was like, some fans are gonna hate this, they're gonna take it too seriously, and to me, it was just funny. The fact they took the risks to do something they knew some fans would consider disrespectful to the memory of one of the greatest Fox X-Men movies made, Logan, but still went ahead and did it, I feel is so Deadpool. This is then followed up with what I think is a 10 out of 10 intro, the TVA showing up to stop Deadpool, where he comments about there's 206 bones in the human body. 207 if I'm watching Gossip Girl. Obviously a boner joke, and Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds' wife, is in Gossip Girl. But another layer on top of that, that joke is a callback to the way Deadpool only had 12 bullets in his first movie, because his first film was very limited on the budget because Fox didn't have faith in it, and now all these years later, he's got that MCU money, and he's using all 206 adamantium bones to kill these TVA agents with the song of Bye 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 by NSYNC. Dude, that intro was epic. That set the tone for the rest of the movie. I knew it was gonna hook me in and I was just gonna have a good time. I loved Deadpool dancing across the credits. I don't know if it's still better than the opening credits of the first Deadpool movie, but it's damn near close. It just brought this happy energy and I was just going along with it. But along with this opening, I also was loving Sean Levy's action sequences. That's another thing I was kind of surprised some people aren't loving. Some people are saying Sean Levy's action was messy, it was not that well choreographed. I disagree. I love the camera movements. There was a lot of 360 shots, aerial views, things where the punches and slashes were matching the beats of the song. Did I love the CGI blood and overuse of like slow-mo CGI? No, but I thought it was still a really refreshing fight scene, and I was having fun watching Deadpool with that. So intro already got me. Just like when I was super excited to see Deadpool put on Logan's claws and the title card pops up behind him, Deadpool and Wolverine. But like with a lot of Deadpool movies, especially the first one, they jump back and forth in the timeline of the movie, taking us to an interview where Deadpool was trying to become an Avenger. Okay, I'm gonna put these down now. They kind of hurt. You hold on to them for so long, you know. It just numbs you. One, I think it's awesome that Jon Favreau was in this movie, but I was kind of confused why they would include him in here until the ending of the movie, which we'll talk about. But it's because he played Foggy in the Daredevil movies, so he has a history with the Marvel movies that were made outside the MCU, and that's the whole point of Deadpool and Wolverine, is to kind of be a tribute to that era of Marvel. Also, this is set in the year 2018, so this is before Infinity War and before Endgame. Tony Stark is still alive, and they make that whole joke about, oh, Robert Downey Jr. doesn't do this anymore. Deadpool jokingly going cameos. But that entire room is filled with like so many Easter eggs throughout the course of the MCU, from the Iron Man briefcase to the proto Captain America shield, even the helmet that fans theorize belonged to a young Tom Holland Spider-Man, and they had it right next to the picture frame of Tony Stark where they did cut off Peter's face, but I'm assuming that's for budgetary reasons because you still need to pay the actors if you're showing their face on camera. But the reason I'm 50-50 on this scene is because this kind of sets up the entire motivation for Deadpool throughout the movie. And even on my first watch of this movie, I didn't like that this is the motivation. So essentially, Deadpool is just feeling inadequate. He wants to be part of a larger team, wants to join the Avengers. But he gets told no, the Avengers are about a team where people need them, not a team where you could feel fulfilled. That's the wrong reason to join the Avengers. And this rejection hurts Deadpool so much that he goes back to his universe using Cable's time jumping device, which I'm surprised the TVA is even allowing Deadpool to have such device. And here's where he broke up with Vanessa just because he wasn't part of a team. I think that was a terrible motivation for Deadpool. Like, of course, we want him to be an Avenger, and we know he's most likely going to show up in a future Avenger movie, but this kind of being the whole catalyst for the movie? Terrible motivation. The other two were much better. Motivation of the first movie is Deadpool gets cancer and he's trying to fix his face and body. Second movie is the love of his life dies and he feels like there's no more reason for him to continue on until he finds a purpose. Here, he just doesn't make it part of the Avengers in another universe, so he breaks up with his girlfriend and decides to work as a car salesman. But from here in the movie, they have the big birthday party that we've seen in the trailers. A lot of good jokes in between them. Peter, for some reason, has piercings that lead to his dong. And then the TVA show up at Deadpool's door for a bigger reason. Now, this is where we got a lot of information that could impact the future of the MCU. Kevin Feige, in an interview, said that if Infinity War or Endgame were like a 9 out of a scale of 1 to 10 on how impactful it is on the MCU, Deadpool and Wolverine is like a 7 or an 8. So stuff that happens in this movie is gonna matter later down the line. And well, he basically meets Paradox, who I also was liking throughout the movie. So he's like a rogue TVA agent who's working off-grid, and they explain some crucial elements we need to know for the future of the MCU. For one, something called anchor beams, which I think is the first time they've brought this up. These are characters that are so important to a universe that when they die, then that universe will automatically start to die slowly. Now, Paradox did say this could take thousands of years, but he hates watching that slow process and would rather just do it much quicker. The anchor for the Fox universe was Hugh Jackman Wolverine, and you know what? That makes a lot of sense. If you go and look at all the Fox X-Men movies, Hugh Jackman Wolverine is the star of more than half of them. It's very obvious Wolverine was the real anchor being of that universe. Now, is the MCU already have an anchor being? I'm going to say it was Tony Stark, and that anchor being thing is going to come back into play, and they're going to say Iron Man dying is causing your universe to die and is going to be one of the catalysts for Secret Wars. Don't know that for a fact, but I'm pretty sure that's what they're going to do. So the MCU is probably on a ticking time of being close to dying. This is then where Deadpool goes, oh, okay, well, if I just need a Wolverine to save my universe, let me go find one, and we get a montage of different Wolverine cameos. Now, there was a lot in there, some for the comic books and some that were just fan service. universe. Going through my favorite ones, I loved short, comic accurate Wolverine. That was such a funny way to start this montage. They at one point show off the Wolverine in the yellow and brown suit. Ooh, that thing looked clean. I didn't know we were getting more than one awesome Wolverine suit in this movie. And of course, in that scene, they also teased the fight between him and the Hulk. Oh, I wish it lasted longer. I wish we actually got to see them fight, but they only just teased it. Hopefully that's not the end of that, and then maybe in a future Secret Wars or other movie, we actually see Wolverine and the Hulk fight each other. But also, another cameo, Henry frickin' Cavill as Wolverine. Dude looked magnificent as Wolverine. I don't think this means he's going to be the MCU Wolverine or that he'll continue on. I think this was like a one and done thing, but Henry Cavill looked fabulous. I also love the joke they made of, we'll treat you better than the guys down the street. Obviously referring to DC, because they sure did my boy Henry Cavill dirt. All the other Wolverines, great and funny, but then they stumble upon the Wolverine that we'll be with for the rest of the movie, the one that let his entire universe down and is now considered the worst Wolverine. I thought this was a great explanation to bring Hugh Jackman back without necessarily touching on the Logan fate. Oh, and heck, that reminds me, I wanted to bring this up. Leave it up to Deadpool in these Fox movies to continue the awful continuity between the movies, because Logan was taking place in like the far off future, close to like post-apocalyptic. And if the opening of Deadpool 2 serves us right, then that means Deadpool 2 takes place after Logan, where we just saw old man Charles Xavier and Wolverine die. But in that same movie, they have a cameo for young Charles Xavier and the younger X-Men, making it all not make sense, dude. What can I say? And again, you can't explain that away by saying Logan takes place outside of Deadpool's universe, because the whole reason Deadpool's universe is dying is because he died in Logan. So they're not separate universes, they're supposed to be the same. Paradox obviously doesn't love the two, so he thinks the best way to get rid of them is to throw them in the void, and then that's where we get our first fight between Deadpool and Wolverine. A fight I really liked. I thought it was so badass that Hugh Jackman got more animal instincts and got on all fours and was coming after Deadpool. I thought that looked really awesome. I was pretty satisfied with the camera movements and the angles and everything was going, but that didn't even turn out to be the best Deadpool and Wolverine fight. But that fight immediately gets cut short because we get to another big cameo in this movie, and that's a hooded blue figure that turns out to be none other than Chris Evans, playing Johnny Storm. This was huge for me. I lost it the first time I saw it because I had a hunch he might show up, but there was a part of me that thought, nah. The reason I thought he would show up, not because of like internet rumors or people hinting at it, was because this is Sean Levy. He directed Free Guy and he managed to get Chris Evans to jump in the movie. So to me, it was like, oh, he'll probably be able to get him to jump into Deadpool and Wolverine. And that happened exactly. The joke Deadpool makes about like, oh, he's about to say Avengers Assemble, only for him to say Flame On, also I thought was nice. To me, it even makes sense the way Johnny lost that fight against Pyro. Pyro manipulates fire. I was just so scared that's how they were gonna end Johnny Storm's cameo, getting hit with the balls in the face and then falling on the floor. That would have been such a disappointment if that was the way they ended that cameo, but they didn't. Instead, Chris Evans stays in the movie for a little bit of time and actually serves a purpose. That's why this didn't just feel like a fan servicey cameo event. While it was awesome to see him, because I actually like those old Fantastic Four movies, and he was even playing the role as Johnny, not Captain America, because he was swearing and being all cocky, something that Captain America is not. He name drops Reed Richards, and that Reed kind of explained what the Void is, bringing up to speed Wolverine and Deadpool on their situation, along with general audiences who don't keep up with all the Marvel homework they have to do, because they even had a joke where Johnny Storm mentions Eliath will eat you up, and Deadpool goes, oh, Eliath from Loki season 1 episode 5? Funny joke, but I think it's only really funny if you're still a diehard MCU fan who is doing their homework, because in my second screening, not a lot of people laughed. Like 2 or 3 other people did in a packed theater, letting you know not a lot of people are doing their MCU homework. But okay, this is then where we meet Cassandra Nova and just a plethora of like the lower characters we would see throughout the course of the early Fox X-Men movies. People like Azazel, Juggernaut, Toad, and so many other mutants. I believe they even had the Russian from The Punisher in there. And while during this interaction, I felt this the first time, I will say in this movie, I started to feel the kind of losing steam of Deadpool just constantly being jokey. I know that's Deadpool's shtick, but in Deadpool and Wolverine, it felt really overdone. Sometimes I like it when Deadpool is just interacting and talking, because then it makes his funny quips and jokes just that more impactful. In this movie, it felt like 90% of Deadpool's dialogue was a punchline, was a joke. And since Deadpool's the main character and he's talking a lot, not every single one of those punchlines or jokes are gonna hit, especially if they're so niche to a fan base or if they deal with gossip outside of the movie sphere. Because like when Johnny Storm died, which I thought was pretty hilarious, and I was like, dude, well, at least he lasted that long in the movie. Deadpool then makes a joke of like, you know what he was doing to the budget? Or after Cassandra Nova did her weird mind thingy inside Deadpool's face, and then he's like, where's the intimacy coach? Which is the name of the coordinator that is there whenever there's sex scenes in movies. It's like some really neat stuff that obviously me as a film fan who obsesses over everything film and movies, almost every joke I understood, and if it didn't make me laugh out loud, at least made me do that thing of funny. But the reason I bring this up is because the whole joke that Deadpool was doing where he was like talking about Johnny Storm was just really bad-mouthing Cassandra. I feel that joke was just too long. They could have wrapped it up. But okay, our heroes managed to escape Cassandra Nova. They're sent off into the void, and they think the best thing to do is to go find the other people Johnny Storm was talking about and build a team to go fight Cassandra. Right before this, though, is where we meet one of the funniest characters in this movie, Nicepool, played by Ryan Reynolds, of course, with luscious hair, a very glossy outfit, and some gold pistols. Everything involving Nicepool I just found so funny, especially the way regular Deadpool was just being mean to him. He definitely has a much funnier moment later on in the movie, which we'll talk about in a sec, but he basically brings them to a Honda Odyssey, their travel vehicle. And two big things happen in this Honda Odyssey. For one, Hugh Jackman, man. He has not lost his touch. He just has perfected the way to play Wolverine, because this is at this point, Wolverine's just had it. Deadpool's been running his mouth, making jokes, not taking anything seriously, and I loved the interaction Hugh Jackman Wolverine's had with Deadpool, because it wasn't just, hey, shut up, stop talking, I hate you, you're annoying. I loved that Wolverine throughout the course of the movie would genuinely call out Deadpool when he was being a psychopath and a murderer. Like when he got Johnny Storm killed and he's like, you just got him murdered, you idiot. Yes, thank you, Wolverine, for pointing out how crazy this guy is. And he does that a couple of times throughout the movie, especially with Nicepool towards the end. He fully brings it up, but it was the speech Hugh Jackman gave to Deadpool in the car where I was like, dude, this is such a great performance by Hugh Jackman right now. He absolutely obliterates Deadpool and talks about how he's a loser, he's a nobody. Of course, the X-Men didn't want you, the Avengers didn't want you, you couldn't even save your relationship with a stripper. Oh, just the delivery Hugh Jackman had there. Perfection. You could tell it hit a nerve with Deadpool, and then it led to what I think is the best fight between Deadpool and Wolverine in the movie, them just going at it inside the Honda Odyssey. What a creative, fun fight scene, because of course you could go all out in the open space like they did in their first fight, but having a contained fight where there's a lot of maneuvering, using the car to their advantage, their healing factor, paired up with the Grease music. I love Grease. Really like that soundtrack. Still listen to it from time to time. I like the song choice in there. And I also loved how that fight went on so long between them. It just ended with them both falling asleep. That had to be my favorite fight between the two throughout the whole movie. But okay, now we get to the point where they get picked up and are taken to the base of some surviving members in the Void, where big cameo moment. And, you know, actually in this part is where I want to ask you guys the question. At what point do you stop calling them cameos and start calling them supporting roles? Because I'm on the verge of saying Chris Evans' Johnny Storm in the movie was not a cameo, and that was a supporting role. The guy had about 5 to 7 minutes of screen time. And all the other characters that Deadpool meets and teams up from other Marvel movies, they definitely had about 10, 12 minutes of screen time. I think that goes past them being cameos and actual supporting roles. And that's why, to me, I thought Deadpool and Wolverine kind of did it the best, maybe outside of Spider-Man No Way Home, which I still kind of have a little bit higher and cherish a little bit more as a big Spider-Man fan. But it's because these cameos or appearances from old actors actually served a purpose in this story. They had a role to play. It wasn't them just showing up going, "Hi, remember me? Okay, bye." No, they did something in the movie and actually added to it, which is way better than like what The Flash did, where they had CGI Nicolas Cage face, brought back Christopher Reeves from the dead. Like, that's the most disrespectful and lazy way to go about the cameos. These to me felt like they served more of a purpose. But okay, getting on to who these faces actually are. One, we get Elektra, played by Jennifer Gardner. That was leaked before the movie came out. I did like the joke though, where they mentioned Daredevil had died and Deadpool's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And she's like, "Don't worry about it." Because in real life, Jennifer Gardner and Ben Affleck have divorced. And that wasn't even the only divorce joke made in the movie. They make fun of Hugh Jackman's real life divorce and how he let himself go after it. It's funny, but I wonder if that stuff will age the movie and not be as funny as it continues on. Next cameo, Blade. That's one I had no idea was being in this movie. Wesley Snipes actually shows up in this film. I know there's a lot of Blade fans out there, but I don't know if it's gigantic. That must have been awesome for longtime Blade fans. And dude, not gonna lie, Wesley Snipes still had it, dude. His aura, his energy, his one-liners, and even the joke he has where he mentions there's only been one Blade and there'll ever only be one Blade. Deadpool looking right at the camera going, "Are we ever gonna make that MCU Blade movie? We'll see." Just thinking about the fact we got Wesley Snipes Blade before Mahershala Ali Blade that they announced 4 to almost 5 years ago is wild. That movie is so cursed, they brought back old Blade before new Blade. Funny. Also, during the Blade and Deadpool interaction, there was an inside joke there. Blade mentions to Deadpool that "I don't like you," with Deadpool responding, "You never did." And this is in reference to when Ryan Reynolds, who was in Blade 3, it's been long rumored that Wesley Snipes and Ryan Reynolds did not get along on that set, and they've had a feud ever since, but it looks like they, one, confirmed it, but also squashed the beef here. But just goes to show you another inside baseball joke that maybe most audiences aren't aware of. But the cameo that arguably was the most funny and fulfilling to me is Channing Tatum finally playing Gambit. Now again, if you haven't been locked into the movie space and followed this stuff all your life, that cameo might make no sense to you. But Channing Tatum had been attached to play Gambit going back all the way to X-Men The Last Stand. But he had a schedule conflict and they gave it to somebody else. Then they finally announced Channing Tatum would get his solo Gambit movie, but we know that got canceled because Fox got bought by Disney. So it was years of Channing Tatum being promised to play Gambit and he never got to do it, and they make fun of it the entire movie. For one, the accent Channing Tatum had, I was dying. The certain moments where you couldn't understand it and Deadpool's like, "All right, who's your dialect coach?" Hilarious. Oh, and dude, can we even talk about that costume? It looks so stupid, but it's comic accurate. But it looked kind of stupid, no offense. And I think that just goes with the whole joke of it. Like, I wasn't taking the Channing Tatum Gambit cameo seriously. This is literally a cameo for a character that never existed, has no nostalgia attachment to it, and is really only for the fans who knew that news. That's why I can't argue with the people that are like, this is so fan servicey. This movie borders on fan fiction. Okay, but as a fan, I liked the fiction I was witnessing. I was having fun with it. I don't know if you were expecting Deadpool 3 to have the tone of Logan. That would have disappointed me. Logan's a much better movie than this was. But did I have fun with this? Heck yeah. Also, so random though, that Channing Tatum as Gambit just starts talking about shooting out of his daddy's balls into his mama. Does Gambit talk like that? I don't think Gambit talks like that. Then we get on to Daphne King, X-23 coming in there. I'm glad they kept that serious. They had a good heart-to-heart with Hugh Jackman where she explains how her Wolverine was really there for her and everything like that. But then again, guys, her being here, once you stop to think about it, doesn't make that much sense because she's supposed to exist in Deadpool's timeline, because that's when Logan happened. And you just told us at the beginning of this movie, Logan dying, and that movie happened in Deadpool's timeline, and that's why it's about to die off. So how did she end up in the void? Why did the TVA just randomly pick X-23 to send her here? This only makes sense if it's a variant universe, but it was there to serve an emotional purpose, so I let it go. But with this team now forming together, they go after Cassandra Nova. I did like that they did mention the Punisher, although he's dead, along with Quicksilver and Daredevil, but they used the Punisher's RPG. It would have been so nice to have Thomas Jane in there. I'm just such a huge Punisher fan. I would have liked to have seen one of the versions in here, but whatever. I will say, then the fight that happens with all of them there, probably the least visually impressive. It was a lot of shaky cam, a lot of stuff going on. It wasn't as well choreographed as some of the other fights, although I did like the Channing Tatum bit when he was putting the cards and then he explodes them all at once. That was cool. Blade also had a couple of highlight moments. That was nice. But it was also they could get Juggernaut's helmet, put it on Cassandra Nova, which they do manage to do, but Wolverine has a change of heart because of his fallen X-Men and the Charles Xavier way. He doesn't want to murder, which, yeah, is kind of stupid and convenient that Cassandra just let them be. But because they did let her go, Cassandra opens a portal and then they're able to go back to Deadpool's universe. I really thought there might have been more portal hopping, or there would have been more to be done. I mean, Ryan Reynolds released that photo where the Sling Reed had a reality stone and a time stone, so theoretically, if they wanted to, as long as Deadpool gets that sling ring, they could fix Logan's universe. Because with that time and reality stone, they could go back in time and to the reality where Wolverine lost his X-Men and save them. But again, it's never occurred or brought up. But now here's where we're getting to the home stretch of the movie, and even Deadpool says it to the audience, and this did feel kind of long. The second time, I did feel the length of the movie. And in Deadpool's universe is when they once again reunite with Nicepool and Dogpool, and it led to the funniest joke of the entire movie, guys. When I tell you, I was dying laughing. I had to shut myself up so I wouldn't annoy people. Deadpool calls Nicepool Van Milder, obviously a reference to Ryan Reynolds' old character he would play, Van Wilder, in the National Lampoon movies. And Nicepool goes, "Oh, I can also lightly break the fourth wall. The proposal." That was the funniest joke of the entire freaking movie. One, I love the proposal. I think that's such a nice Ryan Reynolds movie, but the fact that it just got randomly mentioned like that and Deadpool gets offended going, "Bitch, you think that's what I do?" I thought was so funny. Best joke of the entire movie. But as they're conversating, the Deadpool Corps are called in by Cassandra Nova to stop this Deadpool, which is where Deadpool just blatantly murders Nicepool. I'm not gonna lie, I felt kind of bad for Nicepool, even more so since he doesn't regenerate, and Deadpool was just being a dick and letting him die. Like, oh my god. But again, Wolverine calls him out on him. He's like, "Dude, you just freaking murdered him, you idiot." And well, I guess speaking on the Deadpool Corps, there was a lot of cool people. I thought there would be a bigger deal with these guys. I didn't think they'd have such a short one-time scene. I know there was a lot of cool random cameos in there, like Cowboy Deadpool was voiced by Matthew McConaughey. It's been confirmed now Lady Deadpool was voiced by Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds' wife. But I thought they were going to make a bigger deal out of it and kind of like take off the mask when that wasn't the case. And that entire one-shot sequence of Deadpool and Wolverine fighting the Deadpool Corps, I love the action in there. It wasn't like the best action of the MCU, but I thought it was a really creative scene, panning over and Deadpool and Wolverine just fighting off all these members. It was also during this one shot that there is a Stan Lee cameo on the bus. If you look at it, there's a picture of Stan Lee there, so we've had a Stan Lee cameo in all three Deadpool movies. I'm really happy about that. And this is where we finally get the infamous Wolverine mask. I was getting worried the whole movie. I'm like, dude, when is he gonna put this thing on? Oh, okay, finally. Now, pros and cons with this. Pro, I do think it's badass. It's a cool looking mask and I like it a lot, but I think some people are mistaking that the entire mask is CGI'd onto Hugh Jackman. I don't think the whole mask is CGI. There's very obvious moments where you can tell, no, Hugh Jackman Wolverine is literally wearing a physical mask, but the reason it's giving fully CGI vibes is because they're doing the expression eyes that Deadpool does. And if you notice, whenever Deadpool in his movies has a scene where he's really expressing his eyes, moving his mouth, the entire face looks like CGI, and we know Ryan Reynolds does not wear a CGI Deadpool mask. We've seen behind the scene photos, he wears a literal mask most of the time. But because there are parts of the mask that they're animating, mainly around Wolverine's eyes, it kind of gives the appearance that the entire mask is CGI. So in some moments, it does look better than others. I was just kind of happy to have it. I think that mask is badass as it is. It's just one of those hard things to do in live action. So I see people complaining. I understand. I see people loving it. I also understand. I'm glad we got it. I don't know if we'd ever get it again. But once the Deadpool Corps is distracted by Peter and his big balls coming in, don't know why he has big balls, they go down to Cassandra Nova, who has this device that can destroy entire universes. And I really liked the heart-to-heart between Deadpool and Wolverine in this scene, where Wolverine's like, let me make the sacrifice. I have nobody left. This is really what I'm meant to do. And even Deadpool at one point goes, you know, I waited a long time for this team up, and I think you're the best Wolverine. Really breaking that fourth wall, and I think he was more talking to Hugh Jackman. But in true Deadpool fashion, wanting to be self-sacrificed, he goes in, tries to do it himself, but Wolverine manages to get in there the last minute to help him out, and we get a shirtless Hugh Jackman. That dude, this guy's almost in his 50s, or is in his 50s, and he looks freaking perfect. I don't know how you have a body like that. That's insanity, man. They stop the time machine device. Cassandra Nova dies, which on that note, I will say, I guess Cassandra Nova was pretty forgettable. I thought the first time around, I did think it was really creepy the way she would read people's minds and get real manipulative, and I even thought the actress behind her, who did a good job, but I did like her less on the second watch. But now they've saved the day. Paradox gets taken away. B-15 arrests them and even has kind of like a weird googly eye moment with Peter. They are unfortunately not able to save Wolverine's timeline, but I think that's going to come into play in a later movie. Talk about in a sec. And they decide that Wolverine can stay in Deadpool's universe, replacing the dead one, along with Daphne King X-23, who, if she's supposed to be the same one from Logan, this was already her universe, so she's not really replacing anybody. I don't know. That was kind of a little confusing. And they don't really even tell us what happens to like Blade, Electra, or Channing Tatum Gambit. You know, the B-15 says that she'll look into helping them, but I don't know if that means restoring their entire timelines or now they just live in Deadpool's timeline. Oh, and it also looks like Deadpool and Vanessa are going to get together, which I think is great. So with that said, let's talk about the things that this movie sets up for future films, because there are a couple of things. You might have noticed there's one thing I completely left out, and it was the recurring joke of Thor holding Deadpool dying. Paradox mentions in the beginning of this movie that Deadpool is supposed to be an important figure for the sacred timeline, the 616 timeline, the main MCU timeline. And that's why he was going to save him before he destroyed his universe for that higher purpose. I think that's genuinely going to come into play in Avengers Secret Wars or whatever the next team up movie where Deadpool Wolverine show up in with the Avengers. It looks like Deadpool and Thor are going to get along really well to the point that they're like chummy buddies. I don't think that's just a throwaway joke to be funny, because they kept bringing it up throughout the movie. Deadpool would come back and be like, why was Thor crying? He was asleep at one point. When he wakes up, he goes, oh no, Thor. That's for sure gonna come into play, and they're just gonna find a way to make it make sense. So basically, Deadpool showing up in an Avenger movie. We know that. Two, the other thing they set up really well is Wolverine eventually meeting back up with his old X-Men. Now, I don't think it'll be the X-Men that he had that died from his universe. But if we go off the post-credit scene from the Marvels and Monica Rambeau being stuck in a universe where the X-Men exist with Beast and other characters, it's pretty safe to assume that universe and Deadpool's universe and the MCU universe are all eventually going to clash. They all meet each other. So they're building up this moment where Wolverine will eventually come face to face with a version of his old X-Men, whether it's Scott, Halle Berry, Jean. While this movie did have a lot of cameos, you can tell they were holding back on some big ones. I was disappointed there was no Cyclops cameo. That's who I wanted to see the most. No Magneto, no Charles Xavier, even though he's already shown up in Multiverse of Madness. It seems like they were holding back on some of the bigger faces to save them for a movie down the line. And I think that'll be for when Wolverine comes in contact with them, and that's where we'll have Wolverine probably die, make a sacrifice for them, and it'll be metaphorical in kind of paying respects to his team that died from his universe. I think also, since they kept Deadpool's universe alive, he's just gonna remain there and just rarely will be crossing over to the MCU. I think Disney is happy to do rated R movies, but they're very scared to make Deadpool a permanent part of the MCU because of that nature. But after Secret Wars and they combine all these universes together, maybe Deadpool will be a permanent part, because that is what happens in the comics, and I think that's what they're doing in the movies, is we're gonna get a soft reboot of the MCU where the Fantastic Four, who are already confirmed by Kevin Feige to be taking place in a different universe, by the end of Secret Wars and all that, those Fantastic Four will be part of the MCU. Deadpool and the X-Men will be part of the main MCU like they always were, and they'll probably recast and soft reboot characters like Iron Man, Captain America, and anyone else that's died off. If we want to get onto like the post-credit and end-credit scene, I thought the post-credit scene, the very first one they show up, that I know isn't really a post-credit scene, was just a lovely tribute to the Fox era X-Men movies. I know throughout this movie and even before it came out, a lot of people were complaining how they just kept poking fun at Fox. But with that montage and everything, it seemed like it was poking fun, but in a nice way. It was Deadpool's way of paying respect to that universe. I mean, the literal end of that montage, which I thought was very sweet, is showing the Fox logo. And that means a lot to some of us who grew up on those movies. I like a lot of those movies. And that's why I thought this movie really worked, is because it was paying respects to that era. But the final end credit scene was them just showing Johnny Storm actually did badmouth Cassandra Cassandra Nova, and Deadpool was not lying and was not the reason he got him killed. It's a funny gag, and it's nice to see Chris Evans be naughty from his ulterior Captain America persona, because that's a very Johnny Storm thing to do. While there's definitely things in this movie that impact the future of the MCU, it felt self-contained. It felt like a story that they wanted to tell with just some things that they could build on later. But look, by the end of it, like I said, yeah, this movie's not perfect. I definitely saw a lot more of the flaws, the weaker story, not as emotional impact, didn't love Deadpool's motivation, not every joke hit, but being a movie that celebrates the Fox era of Marvel, making me entertained, having me laugh, seeing some cool action sequences, Deadpool and Hugh Jackman interacting in really fun ways, I had a blast. But I'm not going to argue with those who just didn't love the movie. Anyways, guys, that's just my opinion on Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm going to want to hear your opinions on what you thought about this movie, what you like, what you didn't like. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.